We are living longer than any generation before us, yet our brains are showing signs of decline earlier than ever. In a world filled with chronic stress, processed food, sleep disruption, environmental toxins, and constant digital distraction, the human brain is being pushed into conditions it was never designed to endure. The result is a rapid rise in memory loss and dementia, not only among the elderly, but alarmingly among younger adults as well. But here's the truth that matters most. Dementia is not inevitable. It is not a guaranteed part of aging, nor is it something that appears overnight. It is the cumulative result of daily habits, daily stresses, and daily choices, and that means it can be slowed, prevented, and in many cases meaningfully improved. This book was written to give you back your power, the power to understand your body, the power to rebuild the biological environment your brain depends on, the power to age with clarity, memory, stability, and confidence, even into your 70s, 80s, and 90s. This is not a book about magic pills or quick fixes. It is a book about principles, about rhythms, habits, and lifestyle patterns that determine the future of your brain. When you nourish the brain correctly, when you move with intention, when you sleep deeply, when you manage stress and protect your environment, your brain responds with resilience. With the right knowledge and consistent action, you can protect what matters most, your mind. Inflammation is one of the most powerful yet misunderstood forces shaping the fate of the human brain. Many people believe dementia begins when memory weakens, when familiar names slip away, or when daily tasks suddenly feel difficult. In reality, the path toward cognitive decline begins decades earlier, long before the first signs of forgetfulness. The root of this process is chronic inflammation, a slow, silent, smoldering fire that quietly disrupts the brain's internal balance. Unlike acute inflammation, which heals wounds and fights infection, chronic inflammation spreads persistently throughout the bone. This destructive form of inflammation does not arise from a single cause. Instead, it is the accumulation of countless small insults that individuals experience without noticing. Diets high in refined sugar and processed carbohydrates repeatedly spike blood sugar and insulin, triggering inflammatory pathways that strain the nervous system. Industrial seed oils, found in fast food, packaged snacks, and nearly all processed meals, oxidize rapidly, releasing toxic byproducts into the bloodstream. A sedentary lifestyle reduces oxygen delivery to neurons, weakening their resilience. Chronic stress keeps the brain bathed in cortisol, shrinking the memory center known as the hippocampus. Disrupted sleep prevents the brain's glymphatic system from clearing away toxins, allowing metabolic waste to accumulate. Even low-level exposure to environmental pollutants, pesticides, heavy metals inside the brain, chronic inflammation transforms the behavior of microglia, immune cells that normally act as protectors. When inflammation becomes persistent, microglia shift into an overactive state. Instead of nurturing neurons, they begin attacking healthy neural tissue, degrading synapses, disturbing chemical signaling, and weakening the blood-brain barrier. This cascade of damage develops slowly and silently, often presenting not as memory problems but as subtle symptoms: persistent brain fog, irritability, fatigue, or trouble focusing. Many people dismiss these early signs as stress or aging, unaware that inflammation has already taken hold. The reason inflammation is so dangerous is that it compounds over time. Day after day, poor diet, stress, inactivity, and lack of sleep feed the fire, creating a biochemical environment hostile to long-term brain health. By the time memory issues arise, inflammation has often been damaging neurons for years. But the remarkable truth is that this process can be interrupted. The fire can be cooled, and cognitive decline can be slowed, sometimes significantly, by reducing the inflammatory load before irreversible damage occurs. Although inflammation can devastate the brain, it is also one of the most responsive biological processes to lifestyle intervention. And the most powerful tool for reducing inflammation begins with what we eat. Anti-inflammatory foods such as wild-caught fish rich in omega-3s, leafy greens, berries, nuts, seeds, olive oil, turmeric, and ginger supply the body with compounds that neutralize oxidative stress, calm overactive microglia, and restore internal balance. These foods not only reduce measurable inflammatory markers like CRP, but also enhance mitochondrial function, improve blood flow, and protect neuron membranes. At the same time, removing sugar, refined flour, processed meats, fried foods, and industrial oils significantly lowers the inflammatory burden. Many people notice improvements in mood, energy, and clarity within weeks of adopting an anti-inflammatory diet. Movement is the second pillar of inflammation control. Physical activity enhances circulation, delivers oxygen and nutrients directly to neurons, and triggers the release of BDNF, a protein essential for neural repair and growth. Even modest activity, such as 20-30 minutes of daily walking, can meaningfully reduce inflammatory markers. Strength training improves insulin sensitivity, while stretching and yoga lower cortisol and reduce muscle tension. When combined, these effects create a powerful shift in the body's internal environment, making it far less hospitable to inflammation. Stress management and sleep complete the foundation of anti-inflammatory brain health. Chronic stress activates cortisol, which damages the hippocampus and disrupts memory formation. Simple practices, deep breathing, meditation, time outdoors, or quiet reflection, can switch the body from fight or flight into rest and repair mode, dramatically reducing inflammation. Meanwhile, sleep acts as the brain's nightly cleansing system. During deep sleep, the glymphatic network removes metabolic waste and toxins that accumulate during the day. Without sufficient sleep, this waste builds up, fueling inflammation and damaging neurons. Prioritizing sleep is not optional. It is biological maintenance that the brain depends on. Reducing inflammation does not require extreme discipline or radical lifestyle changes. It is the cumulative result of repeated small choices: eating whole foods, staying hydrated, moving regularly, controlling stress, breathing deeply, and sleeping well. Each choice weakens the inflammatory cycle and strengthens the resilience of the brain. Even individuals who already show early signs of cognitive decline can experience meaningful improvements when inflammation is addressed consistently. The essential truth is this: dementia does not begin with memory loss, it begins with inflammation. And because inflammation is largely influenced by lifestyle, it is also one of the most powerful opportunities for intervention. Cooling the internal fire protects neurons, preserves cognitive function, and restores clarity. Understanding inflammation is the first step toward protecting the future of the mind, and choosing to reduce it is the first act of reclaiming control over long-term brain health. What we eat does not simply fuel the body, it programs the brain. Every bite of food carries biochemical instructions. Some foods nourish neurons, strengthen synapses, and build cognitive resilience. Others trigger inflammation, destabilize neurotransmitters, and accelerate the processes that lead to dementia. Nutrition is not just a supporting factor in brain health. It is one of the primary architects of cognitive aging. The modern diet is one of the greatest threats to the human brain. Over the past century, whole foods have gradually been replaced by ultra-processed products engineered for taste, convenience, and shelf life. These foods are loaded with refined sugar, industrial oils, artificial additives, and chemicals that did not exist in human diets throughout evolutionary history. The brain, a highly delicate organ, is not equipped to manage this constant metabolic stress. High sugar intake disrupts insulin signaling in the brain, starving neurons of energy and contributing to what many researchers now call type 3 diabetes, Alzheimer's disease driven by insulin resistance in the brain. At the same time, processed oils oxidize quickly inside the body, generating free radicals that damage neuron membranes and blood vessels. But the dangers of the modern diet go beyond inflammation and blood sugar instability. Ultra-processed foods often contain synthetic flavor enhancers, preservatives, emulsifiers, and coloring agents that interfere with gut health. Since the gut and brain are deeply connected through the microbiome, disturbances in gut health weaken neurotransmitter production, disrupt mood regulation, and impair cognitive function. In other words, what harms the gut eventually harms the mind. On the other hand, traditional diets based on whole foods consistently demonstrate remarkable benefits for cognitive longevity. Studies on Mediterranean, Okinawan, Nordic, and Mindy diets reveal a shared pattern. The majority of calories come from vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, and high-quality fats, particularly olive oil. These diets naturally reduce inflammation, stabilize blood sugar, and supply the brain with essential micronutrients such as omega-3 fatty acids, magnesium, vitamin B12, folate, choline, and antioxidants. Populations adhering to these dietary patterns show significantly lower rates of dementia and cognitive decline. One often overlooked truth is that the brain's needs change with age. Younger individuals can withstand dietary mistakes more easily, but as we age, neurons lose the flexibility they once had. Mitochondria, our cellular powerhouses, become more sensitive to oxidative stress. Blood flow decreases. The ability to repair damaged proteins slows. Nutrition becomes not just important but foundational to preventing cognitive deterioration. What we eat every day becomes the environment in which our brain must survive. And the wrong environment accelerates decline far earlier than most people realize. The good news is that unlike genetic risk, nutritional choices are fully within our control. Changing the diet changes the chemistry of the brain, and often much faster than people expect. To build long-term cognitive resilience, the brain requires a steady supply of nutrients that support growth, regeneration, and protection. These nutrients do not work in isolation. They form a network of biochemical relationships that keep neurons functioning optimally. When even one component is missing, cognitive performance suffers. When all components are nourished, the brain becomes remarkably resistant to decline. The foundation of brain-friendly nutrition begins with healthy fats, particularly omega-3 fatty acids. DHA, the most critical omega-3 for brain structure, forms the membrane of neurons and synapses. Without adequate DHA, communication between brain cells slows, mood regulation falters, and memory formation becomes inefficient. Fatty fish such as salmon, sardines, and mackerel are the richest sources, but plant-based eaters can rely on chia seeds, walnuts, flax meal, and algae-based supplements. The inclusion of high-quality fats is essential because the brain is, by weight, nearly 60% fat. Next come antioxidants, compounds found in colorful fruits and vegetables such as berries, dark leafy greens, turmeric, cocoa, and green tea. These antioxidants neutralize free radicals, protect mitochondria, and reduce oxidative stress, which is one of the primary drivers of neuronal aging. Foods like blueberries and pomegranates have been shown to improve memory and cognitive processing speed. Meanwhile, spices such as turmeric, rich in curcumin, offer powerful anti-inflammatory effects. Micronutrients such as magnesium, vitamin B12, folate, zinc, selenium, and choline are equally critical. Magnesium supports nerve signaling and sleep quality. B vitamins protect the myelin sheath that insulates neurons. Folate reduces homocysteine, a marker strongly associated with dementia risk. And choline fuels the production of acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter responsible for memory and learning. Eggs, liver, leafy greens, and legumes are among the best sources of choline and folate. Equally important is stabilizing blood sugar. Balanced blood sugar prevents spikes that inflame neurons and destabilize mood. Meals balanced with protein, fiber, and healthy fats slow digestion, preventing glucose crashes that impair concentration. Simple practices such as walking for 10 minutes after meals significantly improve glucose metabolism, protecting the brain from insulin resistance. Hydration plays a surprisingly important role, too. Even mild dehydration reduces attention, memory, and cognitive speed. Drinking enough water and electrolyte-rich fluids ensures that neurons function efficiently, synapses fire correctly, and waste is removed through the glymphatic system. Equally crucial is knowing what to avoid. Ultra-processed foods, artificial sweeteners, excessive alcohol, trans fats, and deep-fried oils accelerate cognitive aging. Removing these foods has a more dramatic impact on mental clarity than most people expect. Ultimately, nutrition for cognitive longevity is not about restriction. It is about nourishment. It is about feeding the brain what it was designed to thrive on. When the diet is rich in whole foods, balanced nutrients, and anti-inflammatory compounds, the brain operates in its ideal state, clear, focused, emotionally stable, and resilient to the stresses of aging. The path to a sharp mind is paved not with supplements or miracle cures, but with daily meals made of real, nutrient-dense, unprocessed foods. Changing the way we eat is the most accessible and powerful act we can take to protect our cognitive future. Movement is not just a physical necessity, it is a biological requirement for the health and longevity of the human brain. Long before humans created machines, chairs, or digital screens, the brain evolved in an environment where movement was constant. Hunting, gathering, climbing, building, escaping danger, and exploring territory were integral to survival. The brain developed into the powerful organ it is today precisely because movement stimulated it every hour of every day. Modern life has removed that stimulus, and the brain is now paying the price. When the body becomes sedentary, blood flow slows and the brain receives less oxygen and glucose, its two primary fuels. Without these essential inputs, neurons struggle to generate energy, synapses weaken, and cognitive performance declines. Chronic inactivity also increases inflammation, triggers metabolic dysfunction, and reduces the production of neurotransmitters that regulate mood, motivation, and concentration. This is why even short periods of sitting can lead to feelings of fogginess or fatigue. We are not designed for stillness. Movement, on the other hand, activates nearly every system that the brain depends on. When we walk, blood circulates more rapidly, delivering oxygen and nutrients to the brain. When we engage in aerobic activity, the heart pumps more efficiently, sending fresh blood to regions responsible for memory, planning, and emotional regulation. Researchers have found that regular moderate exercise increases the size of the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, effectively reversing years of shrinkage caused by aging. Even gentle activities like stretching, yoga, or light walking signal the body to increase blood flow, release muscle tension, stabilize blood sugar, and reduce cortisol. These small shifts profoundly affect cognition because they give neurons the internal environment they need to thrive. Without this environment, the brain slowly moves toward decline. One of the most important discoveries in modern neuroscience is the role of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, often referred to as fertilizer for the brain. BDNF is released primarily through movement, especially aerobic movement. It helps neurons grow, repair, and form new connections. In essence, BDNF makes neuroplasticity possible. People who move regularly create a brain that is adaptable, resilient, and capable of learning and memory well into old age. People who remain sedentary deprive the brain of the very chemical that protects it from degeneration. Equally significant is how movement improves metabolic health. Exercise increases insulin sensitivity, lowers blood sugar, and reduces visceral fat, all of which play a major role in preventing dementia. Metabolic dysfunction often appears years before memory loss, and movement is one of the strongest interventions for reversing it. Movement is not just a tool for fitness, it is one of the most powerful strategies for long-term cognitive stability. In short, the brain is not just connected to movement, the brain depends on it. Movement shapes memory, movement shapes mood, movement shapes learning, focus, emotional balance, and mental resilience. Without movement, the brain withers. With movement, it grows. To build a brain that stays sharp for life, movement must be woven into the fabric of everyday living, not treated as an occasional workout, but as a biological rhythm. You do not need extreme fitness routines or long hours at the gym. What the brain needs is consistent, varied, and intentional movement that supports neuroplasticity and metabolic health. Walking is the foundation. Walking is the most natural and accessible form of movement. Humans have. Just 7,000 to 10,000 steps per day has been shown to reduce dementia risk dramatically. Walking increases blood flow, enhances glucose regulation, reduces anxiety, and stimulates BDNF. Walking after meals significantly improves insulin sensitivity. This one habit alone can reverse years of metabolic strain on the brain. Strength training is equally vital. Muscle mass declines with age, and with it comes reduced insulin sensitivity, lower metabolic rate, and increased inflammation. Lifting weights, or using resistance bands, body weight exercises, or simple household items signals the body to build lean muscle, strengthen bones, and improve hormone balance. Strong muscles support strong cognition. Just 2 or 3 sessions per week of 20-30 minutes each can have profound effects. Balance and coordination exercises such as Tai Chi, yoga, or dance train the cerebellum, the part of the brain responsible for movement accuracy, spatial awareness, and coordination. These practices reduce fall risk, which is crucial because head injuries significantly increase dementia risk. At the same time, balance exercises challenge the brain to integrate sensory input from vision, touch, and inner ear signals, increasing neuroplasticity. High-intensity interval training, HIIT, can be beneficial when done safely, especially for improving cardiovascular fitness. Short bursts of elevation followed by rest stimulate mitochondrial function and improve the brain's ability to manage stress. However, HIIT is not required for cognitive longevity. The brain benefits more from consistency than intensity. One often overlooked form of brain training is learning new physical skills. Activities like dancing, martial arts, swimming, or even gardening require the brain to coordinate movement patterns, rhythm, timing, and balance. They are some of the strongest neuroplasticity triggers because the brain must constantly adapt, predict, and respond. These activities blend physical exercise with cognitive challenge, strengthening both systems simultaneously. Most importantly, movement should become a lifestyle, integrated into the day rather than isolated into a single workout session. Simple actions such as standing up every 30 minutes, stretching your arms, rotating your spine, taking the stairs, carrying groceries, or doing household chores all contribute to brain health. Micro-movements done consistently are more beneficial than occasional intense workouts. A movement-rich lifestyle does not require discipline so much as awareness. Once you understand that every step, stretch, and breath of exertion literally shapes the architecture of your brain, movement becomes not a task but an investment. The future of your mind is built in the small choices you make every day. Movement is the catalyst that keeps your brain young, flexible, and resilient. Sleep is not simply a period of rest. It is the most sophisticated repair mechanism the brain possesses. While many people think of sleep as passive, the brain is never more active and never more essential to long-term cognitive health than during deep restorative sleep. For decades, scientists underestimated the importance of sleep. Only recently have we discovered that sleep is the critical determinant of whether the brain ages gracefully or deteriorates prematurely. During sleep, particularly during slow-wave deep sleep, the brain activates the glymphatic system, a specialized waste clearance network that flushes out toxins, metabolic byproducts, inflammatory molecules, and damaged proteins that accumulate during waking hours. One of the substances cleared is beta-amyloid, the sticky protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. When sleep is inadequate, the glymphatic system cannot fully cleanse these toxins, allowing them to accumulate night after night. Over years, this buildup becomes a major driver of neurodegeneration. Sleep also governs neurotransmitter balance. During different stages of sleep, the brain resets dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, and norepinephrine levels, chemicals essential for mood, motivation, memory, and attention. Without enough sleep, these neurotransmitters fall out of balance, leading to symptoms such as irritability, anxiety, depression, and cognitive fog. Many individuals mistakenly believe they are dealing with psychological issues when, in fact, they are dealing with chronic sleep deprivation. The circadian rhythm, the internal 24-hour biological clock, plays a crucial role as well. Almost every cell in the body follows this rhythm, and the brain depends on its stability. Exposure to morning sunlight synchronizes the circadian clock, telling the brain when to release cortisol for morning alertness and when to release melatonin for evening calm. When the circadian rhythm is disrupted by irregular sleep schedules, late-night screen exposure, or shift work, the brain loses its natural timing system. This disruption reduces sleep quality, increases inflammation, alters metabolism, and accelerates cognitive decline. Poor sleep affects more than just energy levels. It directly impairs learning and memory. During REM sleep, the brain consolidates memories, processes emotions, and strengthens neural connections. Lack of REM sleep weakens long-term memory formation and reduces the brain's ability to regulate emotional responses. This is why chronic sleep issues often manifest as emotional instability before memory problems become obvious. The connection between sleep and brain health is so deep that even mild sleep deprivation, losing just 1 hour of sleep per night, can impair reaction time, reduce verbal fluency, and increase beta amyloid accumulation. Over long periods, consistent sleep loss becomes one of the strongest predictors of cognitive impairment in midlife and older age. What feels like a benign inconvenience, staying up late, working irregular hours, scrolling through screens in bed, has profound cumulative consequences for the brain. Sleep is not optional, and it is not something we can make up on weekends. It is a daily biological requirement that determines how well the brain ages. If inflammation is the internal fire, then sleep is the firefighter. It extinguishes that fire every night. Without it, the burning accelerates. To harness the power of sleep for long-term cognitive protection, we must build daily habits that support deep rest and a stable circadian rhythm. The goal is to create a biological environment where sleep can consistently do its work, cleansing toxins, repairing neural tissue, balancing hormones, and preparing the mind for learning, memory, and emotional stability. The first step is to regulate light exposure. Light is the primary controller of the circadian rhythm. Morning sunlight, especially within the first hour of waking, signals the brain to suppress melatonin and increase cortisol naturally, establishing the rhythm for the entire day. In contrast, bright light at night, particularly blue light from screens, tricks the brain into thinking it is still daytime. This suppresses melatonin production, delaying sleep onset and reducing deep sleep. A simple practice of stepping outside for 5 to 10 minutes in the morning and dimming lights in the evening can transform sleep quality dramatically. Temperature control is equally important. The brain requires a drop in core body temperature to initiate sleep, which is why cool rooms, around 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, are ideal. Warm showers or baths before bed help by triggering a rapid cooling effect afterward, making it easier to fall asleep. Sleeping in a cool, dark room signals safety and relaxation, allowing the body to enter deep sleep more quickly. Evening routines shape the brain's transition from wakefulness to rest. Reducing screen exposure, dimming lights, practicing slow breathing, journaling, and avoiding heavy meals help calm the nervous system. Caffeine should be limited after early afternoon, as its half-life can disrupt sleep hours later. Alcohol, often mistaken as a sleep aid, actually fragments sleep and prevents the brain from entering restorative stages. Consistent sleep schedules are critical. The circadian clock thrives on regularity. Going to bed and waking up at the same time, even on weekends, reinforces the brain's internal timing system, making it easier to fall asleep and wake naturally. Irregular sleep patterns confuse the brain and weaken the rhythm responsible for hormone balance, temperature regulation, and cognitive restoration. Movement during the day improves sleep at night. Regular exercise reduces stress, stabilizes mood, and increases the body's drive for deep rest. However, intense exercise close to bedtime can overstimulate the nervous system, delaying sleep onset. Light stretching, yoga, or walking are ideal for evening relaxation. Finally, supplementation can be helpful, but should not replace lifestyle practices. Magnesium supports muscle relaxation and nervous system calm. Melatonin can assist with circadian misalignment, but is not designed for long-term use. Herbal teas like chamomile, lemon balm, or passion flower gently encourage sleepiness. The real foundation remains behavior, not pills. When sleep becomes consistent, deep, and aligned with the body's natural rhythms, the brain begins to repair itself more effectively. Inflammation declines, memory stabilizes, emotional resilience increases, cognitive fog lifts. People often describe the experience as waking up inside my mind again. The truth is simpler. The brain finally has the opportunity to heal. Sleep is the guardian of cognitive longevity. It is the nightly architect that rebuilds what the day tears down. Protecting sleep means protecting the future of the mind, and no brain can remain sharp without it. Stress is one of the most powerful and underestimated forces shaping the health of the human brain. Unlike inflammation, poor diet, or lack of movement, factors that damage the brain slowly and quietly, stress can alter neural pathways within days. Chronic stress does not simply make us feel overwhelmed, it rewires how the brain functions, responds, and remembers. It is one of the strongest predictors of cognitive decline, yet it remains the least acknowledged threat in conversations about dementia and long-term brain health. The biological mechanics of stress begin with cortisol, a hormone produced in the adrenal glands. In short bursts, cortisol is life-saving. It sharpens attention, mobilizes energy, and prepares the body to respond to danger. In this sense, stress is not the enemy. Chronic stress is. When cortisol remains elevated for months or years, the hormone becomes toxic to neural tissue. The hippocampus, the brain's memory and learning center, is particularly vulnerable. Long-term stress shrinks the hippocampus, reduces neural branching, and weakens the ability to form new memories. This is why people under chronic stress often experience forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, and a sense of mental exhaustion. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making, emotional regulation, and impulse control, is another casualty of prolonged stress. High cortisol interferes with executive function, making even simple decisions feel difficult. At the same time, stress amplifies the activity of the amygdala, the emotional alarm center. This creates a dangerous neurological imbalance where emotional reactivity increases while emotional regulation decreases. Over time, this imbalance becomes hardwired, making individuals more sensitive to stress, more anxious, more impulsive, and emotionally fragile. Stress also disrupts the body's hormonal harmony beyond cortisol. It alters serotonin levels, increasing the risk of depression. It interferes with dopamine pathways, reducing motivation, focus, and reward sensitivity. It affects melatonin production, disturbing sleep, which in turn intensifies stress, creating a destructive feedback loop. Chronic stress is no longer a psychological inconvenience. It is a physiological condition that slowly degrades cognitive resilience. One of the most overlooked consequences of chronic stress is its impact on inflammation. High cortisol, paradoxically, promotes systemic inflammation when elevated too long. This inflammation further degrades neural tissues, weakens the blood-brain barrier, and accelerates aging processes. What begins as emotional stress soon becomes biochemical stress, affecting every system of the body. Modern life exaggerates these effects. Humans are bombarded with constant information, notifications, deadlines, and social expectations. The brain was never designed for this level of stimulation. Primitive threats may have disappeared, but mental and emotional threats have taken their place. Unpredictable schedules, financial strain, global news cycles, digital overload. The body reacts to all of them as if they were predators. But stress is not destiny. The brain is remarkably adaptable. With intentional practices, the structures damaged by chronic stress can be repaired and the emotional circuitry can be rebalanced. The first step is understanding that stress is not simply a feeling. It is a neurological event that reshapes the brain. And what reshapes the brain can also restore it. The path to emotional brain health begins with restoring harmony to the body's hormonal systems. When cortisol, serotonin, dopamine, and melatonin fall back into balance, the brain becomes resilient again. This does not require eliminating stress, something impossible in modern life, but regulating the nervous system so stress no longer becomes chronic, toxic, or overwhelming. Restoring cortisol balance starts with cultivating predictable rhythms. The brain thrives on structure, consistent wake times, consistent sleep times, regular meals, daily exposure to natural light, and scheduled periods of rest. Consistency gives the brain a sense of safety, which reduces cortisol production automatically. A predictable rhythm is not merely good for lifestyle, It is medicine for the emotional brain. Breathing practices are among the fastest tools for resetting the nervous system. Slow, deep breaths, especially those that emphasize a longer exhalation, signal the vagus nerve to activate the parasympathetic system, shifting the body out of fight or flight. Even a single minute of controlled breathing can lower cortisol levels. Over time, daily breathwork rewires the stress response itself, making the brain more stable and less reactive. Movement is another powerful regulator. Exercise naturally reduces stress hormones, increases dopamine and serotonin, and enhances endorphins, the brain's natural mood stabilizers. Even a 10-minute walk can interrupt the cortisol cycle. More importantly, movement teaches the brain that it is capable of coping with stress, restoring a sense of agency, and reducing emotional overload. Mindfulness practices, meditation, slow walking, grounding, journaling, have been shown to increase the thickness of the prefrontal cortex while shrinking the amygdala. These physical changes strengthen emotional regulation and reduce anxiety. Mindfulness does not eliminate stress. It changes the brain's relationship to it. Instead of perceiving stress as a threat, the brain learns to observe it without overreacting. Social connection is a critical, often underestimated component of emotional brain health. Loneliness is one of the most potent triggers of chronic stress. Meaningful interactions raise oxytocin levels, which buffer cortisol and increase trust, safety, and emotional stability. Humans are social by design, and the brain functions best when embedded in supportive relationships. Even brief moments of genuine human connection can dramatically improve emotional regulation. Sleep, as discussed in the previous chapter, is one of the strongest tools for restoring emotional balance. Without adequate sleep, the emotional centers of the brain cannot reset, leaving the system overwhelmed and fragile. Deep sleep recalibrates stress hormones and strengthens the prefrontal cortex's ability to regulate emotions. Nutrition also plays a role. Foods high in omega-3s, magnesium, antioxidants, and amino acids that support neurotransmitters help reduce anxiety and stabilize mood. Dehydration, caffeine overload, and nutrient deficiencies all intensify stress responses. Ultimately, emotional brain health depends on daily regulation, small, repeated practices that keep cortisol in check and allow the brain's emotional centers to function harmoniously. Stress will always be a part of life, but chronic stress does not have to be. By shaping our rhythms, choices, and environments, we shape the internal chemistry of the brain itself. Emotional balance is not the absence of challenges, but the presence of resilience. And resilience is the foundation upon which long-term cognitive health is built. For centuries, the gut was seen as nothing more than a digestive system, an anatomical tube that processed food and produced waste. But modern neuroscience has rewritten this outdated understanding. Today, we know the gut is far more than an organ of digestion. It is a central command center that communicates continuously with the brain. This connection, known as the gut-brain axis, is one of the most powerful yet overlooked determinants of cognitive aging. The gut contains more than 100 trillion microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, and viruses that make up the microbiome. This vast ecosystem produces over 30 neurotransmitters, including serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, all essential for mood, motivation, and cognitive stability. In fact, nearly 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut. These microbes regulate inflammation, digestion, immunity, detoxification, and even the brain stress. The gut communicates with the brain through multiple pathways. The vagus nerve, often described as the highway between body and brain, transmits signals about digestion, stress, and immune activity directly to brain regions responsible for emotion and memory. When the gut is inflamed, the vagus nerve sends danger signals that activate the amygdala, increasing anxiety and stress sensitivity. Poor gut health also alters the production of short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, particularly butyrate, one of the most important molecules for brain health. SCFAs reduce inflammation, strengthen the gut lining, and support neuroplasticity. Without them, the gut becomes permeable, leading to leaky gut, where toxins and undigested food particles enter the bloodstream, igniting a cascade of inflammation that eventually reaches the brain. Diet, stress, medications, environmental toxins, and lack of microbial diversity all play roles in damaging the microbiome. The modern diet, high in sugar, low in fiber, full of artificial additives, feeds harmful bacteria and starves the beneficial ones. Antibiotics, while life-saving, disrupt microbial balance. Chronic stress alters gut motility and increases inflammation. Even lack of sleep disrupts microbial rhythms. Week by week, year by year, these disruptions weaken the microbiome, allowing inflammation to spread to the brain long before dementia symptoms appear. The early signs of microbiome dysfunction rarely appear as digestive issues alone. They appear as mood swings, irritability, anxiety, poor concentration, and cognitive fog. Many individuals attempt to fix these symptoms through medications or stimulants, unaware that the root cause may lie in the gut. The gut is not just influencing digestion, it is influencing who we are, how we think, and how we age. A declining microbiome is one of the earliest predictors of cognitive decline, but the opposite is also true. A nourished, diverse microbiome is one of the strongest protectors of long-term brain health. When the gut thrives, the brain thrives. When the gut weakens, the brain follows. Rebalancing the microbiome is one of the most powerful interventions for protecting cognitive health. Unlike genetics or aging, gut health is profoundly influenced by daily choices. Just as the microbiome can be damaged by poor diet, stress, and chemicals, it can also be restored through targeted nutrition, lifestyle adjustments, and environmental awareness. Healing the gut requires both nurturing beneficial bacteria and reducing the factors that feed harmful microbes. The foundation of microbiome restoration begins with fiber, specifically diverse, plant-based fiber known as prebiotics. Fiber is the primary fuel for beneficial bacteria. Vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds, and whole grains supply the microbiome with the substrates necessary to produce SCFAs like butyrate. These SCFAs strengthen the intestinal lining, reduce inflammation, and create a biochemical environment that supports long-term brain health. Diets low in fiber starve beneficial bacteria, allowing pathogenic strains to dominate. A simple rule applies: the more plant diversity you eat, the richer your microbiome becomes. Fermented foods are another essential pillar. Yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, natto, and kombucha introduce live cultures that help restore bacterial balance. These foods act like reinforcements, replenishing depleted microbial populations. Studies show that consuming fermented foods regularly can reduce inflammatory markers and increase microbiome diversity within weeks. Equally important is removing the factors that damage the microbiome. Ultra-processed foods, artificial sweeteners, alcohol, chronic stress, frequent antibiotics, and poor sleep all degrade microbial diversity. Artificial sweeteners like aspartame and sucralose alter gut bacteria in ways that promote insulin resistance and inflammation. Processed foods contain emulsifiers and preservatives that destabilize gut integrity. Alcohol increases intestinal permeability, contributing to the inflammatory cascade. Even stress alters the gut's ability to digest and absorb nutrients, pushing the microbiome further out of balance. Lifestyle habits play a strong role as well. Regular movement enhances gut motility and increases microbial diversity. Meditation and breathing practices calm the nervous system, improving vagal tone and reducing gut inflammation. Adequate sleep helps regulate microbial circadian rhythms. Spending time in natural environments, even gardening or walking outdoors, exposes the body to beneficial environmental microbes, enriching the gut ecosystem. Probiotics and supplements can assist, but they cannot replace foundational dietary and lifestyle habits. Probiotics are transient. They pass through the gut, but rarely colonize permanently. Their primary benefit is signaling the immune system and supporting microbial balance temporarily. Prebiotics, plant fibers, are far more important for long-term microbial health. A diet rich in fiber, diversely sourced and consistently consumed is the true cornerstone of gut repair. When the gut begins to heal, the effects on the brain are unmistakable. Mood stabilizes, anxiety decreases, cognitive clarity returns, inflammation declines, sleep improves. Many people describe it as waking up again or feeling like myself for the first time in years. The brain is not operating alone. It is responding to the signals sent by a microbiome that has regained balance. A healthy gut is one of the strongest defenses against cognitive decline. It nourishes the brain, stabilizes mood, regulates inflammation, and supports neuroplasticity. The gut-brain axis is not a metaphor. It is a biological reality. And by caring for the hidden world within the gut, we create the internal environment where the brain can flourish for decades to come. Modern humans live in an environment filled with chemicals our biology was never designed to handle. From the air we breathe to the water we drink, the food we eat, and the products we apply to our skin, the brain is continually exposed to substances that did not exist throughout most of human evolution. Many of these chemicals are invisible, odorless, and unnoticeable, yet deeply harmful to neural tissue. The cumulative effect is subtle but profound. Environmental toxins quietly accelerate cognitive aging, increase inflammation, damage neurons, and weaken the brain's natural defenses long before symptoms of one of the most DED beyond heavy metals. Pesticide air pollution, a global problem affecting billions, is equally destructive. Microscopic particles called PM2.5 penetrate deep into the lungs and bloodstream, traveling quickly to the brain. These particles trigger inflammatory responses that damage neurons, weaken brain vasculature, and reduce oxygenation. Studies show that people living in polluted cities experience faster cognitive decline and are more likely to develop dementia. Children exposed to pollution display reduced attention spans and lower cognitive performance, demonstrating that the impact begins early and continues throughout life. Household toxins, cleaning chemicals, fragrances, plastics, and flame retardants create constant low-level exposure. Phthalates and BPA, bisphenol A. These toxins, the most Traub. Protecting the brain from environmental toxins is not about living in fear. It is about creating a safer internal environment where neurons can thrive. While we cannot eliminate all exposures, we can dramatically reduce toxic load through daily choices. Detoxification is not a one-time cleanse. It is an ongoing lifestyle that supports the body's natural defense systems. The first strategy is reducing exposure at the source. Start with the air. Indoor air can be more polluted than outdoor air due to cleaning products, mold, dust, and synthetic fragrances. Improving ventilation, opening windows when possible, and using HEPA air purifiers significantly reduce airborne toxins. Avoiding synthetic air fresheners, scented candles, and chemical cleaners removes common triggers of inflammation and neurological irritation. Switching to non-toxic cleaning products and fragrance-free personal care items lightens the chemical burden immediately. Water filtration is essential. Tap water often contains microplastics, chlorine, pharmaceutical residues, heavy metals, and agricultural runoff. Activated carbon filters or reverse osmosis systems provide meaningful protection. Staying hydrated with clean water also supports the liver and kidneys, key organs responsible for detoxification. Food is another major source of toxin exposure. Choosing organic produce when possible reduces pesticide load. Washing fruits and vegetables thoroughly, peeling certain items, and avoiding processed foods minimize exposure to additives, preservatives, and contaminants. Reducing consumption of high-mercury fish, such as swordfish, tuna, and king mackerel, protects the brain from heavy metal accumulation. Using glass, stainless steel, or ceramic containers instead of plastic prevents BPA and phthalate contamination, especially when heating food. Inside the home, reducing mold exposure can profoundly improve cognitive function. Regular moisture control, dehumidifiers, proper ventilation in bathrooms, and repairing leaks prevent mold growth. If symptoms suggest mold toxicity, fatigue, cognitive fog, headaches, professional testing may be necessary. Supporting the body's natural detoxification systems is equally important. The liver, kidneys, lymphatic system, skin, and lungs work constantly to eliminate toxins, but they require support. Movement increases lymphatic flow and circulation. Sweating through exercise or sauna therapy assists toxin removal. Fiber binds toxins in the gut, preventing reabsorption. Antioxidant-rich foods, berries, turmeric, green tea, dark leafy greens, assist the liver in neutralizing reactive molecules. Hydration supports kidney function. Deep breathing amplifies oxygen flow and helps clear volatile toxins. The microbiome plays a critical role in detoxification. Beneficial bacteria break down toxins, support the gut lining, and prevent harmful chemicals from leaking into the bloodstream. A strong microbiome reduces the brain's exposure to toxic molecules and enhances resilience. Probiotic and prebiotic foods, combined with a diet rich in plants, strengthen this system. Even the nervous system itself is part of detoxification. Sleep activates the glymphatic system, which clears toxins directly from the brain. Without adequate sleep, toxins accumulate rapidly. Stress management is also essential because chronic cortisol interferes with the body's detox processes. Brain protection is not about perfection, it is about reducing overall toxic burden so the brain has the resources to repair, adapt, and protect itself. Small, consistent changes have massive cumulative effects. When the environment becomes cleaner, the brain becomes clearer. When toxin exposure decreases, inflammation decreases. When inflammation decreases, cognitive resilience increases. In a world filled with unseen threats, detoxification is not a luxury, it is a necessity. By consciously shaping our surroundings and supporting the body's natural defenses, we provide the brain a fighting chance to remain sharp, stable, and strong for decades to come. Memory is not a simple archive of past experiences. It is the most dynamic, fluid, and constantly evolving system within the brain. Each memory is not stored in a single location, but woven across distributed neural networks, strengthened or weakened by the rhythms of experience, emotion, and repetition. Understanding memory is essential not only for improving learning, but for preventing cognitive decline. The erosion of memory is one of the earliest signs of dementia, yet the mechanisms that preserve memory remain among the most trainable functions of the brain. At the biological level, memory formation begins with synapses, the microscopic gaps between neurons. When we learn something new, neurons communicate more frequently, releasing neurotransmitters that strengthen these synaptic connections in a process called long-term potentiation, LTP. LTP is the foundation of learning, a kind of neural muscle building that reinforces pathways so information is easier to access. But just as muscles weaken without use, neural pathways decay when forgotten or ignored. Use it or lose it is not a metaphor. It is neuroscience. Emotion plays a powerful role. The amygdala, the brain's emotional hub, acts as a filter that determines which memories should be preserved. Emotionally charged events strengthen memory formation, which is why people remember weddings, traumas, or major life milestones vividly, yet forget ordinary days. The brain prioritizes what it perceives as meaningful, and meaning is often tied to emotion. Sleep is equally important. During deep and REM sleep, the brain consolidates memories, organizing them, discarding unnecessary information, and strengthening essential pathways. Without sufficient sleep, new memories fail to stabilize, and old memories become harder to retrieve. Many people mistake sleep-deprived forgetfulness for early cognitive decline, but it is simply a brain deprived of its nightly filing process. Yet the most powerful engine of memory is novelty. New experiences force the brain to form new neural pathways, strengthening neuroplasticity. This is why traveling to new places, learning new skills, and encountering unfamiliar challenges dramatically enhance cognitive function. Routine, in contrast, dulls memory. Doing the same tasks daily, driving the same route, eating the same meals, engaging in the same conversations, reduces the need for plasticity, weakening the neural networks responsible for learning. Modern life, with its reliance on digital tools, further complicates memory. Smartphones have become external memory storage, outsourcing names, dates, directions, and even simple facts. While technology expands convenience, it reduces cognitive engagement. The brain remembers what it practices. If we stop practicing recall, the ability weakens. This is not aging, it is underuse. Memory decline does not begin when neurons die. It begins when the brain stops being challenged. Fortunately, the opposite is also true. Memory improves when the brain is stimulated, engaged, emotionally activated, and rested. The architecture of memory is not fixed. It is fluid, moldable, and responsive to how we live. Protecting and expanding cognitive capacity requires intentional engagement with activities that challenge the brain in meaningful ways. Learning must be continuous, varied, and stimulating enough to trigger neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and grow. While many people assume memory loss is an unavoidable part of aging, research shows that adults can continue building new synapses throughout their entire lives. The key is providing the right stimuli. One of the most effective ways to expand memory is through the acquisition of new skills. Learning a new language, playing a musical instrument, taking up painting, or studying a complex subject all introduce unfamiliar neural patterns. These activities force the brain to adapt, strengthening pathways involved in focus, memory, and problem solving. They also increase the density of gray matter in regions associated with cognitive resilience. The more we learn, the more we protect the brain from decline. Equally powerful is cross-training the brain, engaging in diverse activities that activate different cognitive domains. For example, reading stimulates comprehension and abstraction. Puzzles strengthen logic and spatial reasoning. Storytelling enhances linguistic memory. Physical activities like dance or martial arts combine movement with rhythm, timing, and coordination, activating multiple brain regions simultaneously. Cross-training creates a richer cognitive environment than specializing in a single mental skill. Repetition and recall are the backbone of memory reinforcement. Unlike passive recognition, such as rereading notes, active recall stimulates deeper learning. Practices such as summarizing a book from memory, explaining a concept out loud, or retrieving names without checking a phone strengthen the neural circuits responsible for long-term retention. Retrieval is exercise, repetition is training, attention is the gateway to memory. In a world full of distractions, multitasking has become normalized, but multitasking fragments attention, weakening memory formation. Deep focus, working with intention, removing distractions, and concentrating on a single task, creates stronger memory traces. By simplifying the environment and reducing cognitive noise, we improve the brain's ability to encode and store information. Social engagement also expands cognitive capacity. Conversations require attention, memory, empathy, and quick thinking, functions that stimulate multiple brain regions simultaneously. People who maintain active social lives consistently show slower cognitive decline. Human connection stimulates the emotional and cognitive systems in ways no digital activity can replicate. Finally, practicing curiosity helps preserve the mind. The act of questioning, why does this work? How does that happen? What if I try this differently? Keeps the brain active, flexible, and adaptable. Curiosity turns everyday life into a cognitive gym, transforming simple experiences into learning opportunities. Building cognitive resilience is not about occasional effort, but daily engagement. Every new skill, every conversation, every moment of deep focus strengthens the architecture of the mind. Memory is not a passive process. It is a lifelong practice, and as long as we continue to challenge, stretch, and nourish the brain, we continue to grow cognitively, regardless of age. All of the scientific insights about inflammation, nutrition, movement, sleep, stress, and environmental toxins converge toward a single truth. The brain is shaped far more by daily habits than by genetics or aging. Cognitive longevity is not the result of a miracle supplement, a rare diet, or an expensive therapy. Instead, it is the accumulation of thousands of small decisions, stacked consistently over years, that determine whether the brain remains sharp or begins to decline. Many people misunderstand cognitive decline as a sudden event beginning in midlife or older age, but dementia develops much earlier, quietly, almost imperceptibly, through patterns in everyday living. It is built in the mornings rushed without nourishment, the nights sacrificed to screens, the stress carried without release, the months without movement, the years without challenge. The human brain requires rhythm, repetition, recovery, and stimulation. When these elements are disrupted, decline begins far before symptoms appear. Lifestyle mastery begins with awareness. Once you recognize that every action sends a biochemical signal to the brain, you begin to see how deeply behavior shapes cognition. The food you choose becomes neurotransmitters. The movements you make become neural pathways. The sleep you prioritize becomes synaptic repair. The stress you manage becomes emotional resilience. The relationships you nurture become cognitive protection. The environment you curate becomes the safety net that shields neurons from decline. This perspective reframes longevity from something that happens later to something that begins now. Aging is not a battle lost in old age. It is won, or lost, decades earlier, often without conscious intention. But the encouraging truth is that the brain responds quickly to positive change. Within days of improving sleep, memory improves. Within weeks of eating whole foods, inflammation drops. Within months of movement, neuroplasticity expands. Even individuals already displaying mild cognitive impairment can often regain clarity through structured lifestyle changes. Modern life, however, is not designed for brain longevity. It is designed for speed, convenience, distraction, and consumption. People spend hours sitting, scrolling, and multitasking, behaviors that diminish cognitive capacity. Food is engineered for pleasure, not nourishment. Work schedules disrupt circadian rhythms. Cities expose residents to constant pollution. The very environment in which we live pulls us away from the conditions the brain requires to age slowly. Thus, mastery of lifestyle is not passive, it is intentional. It is the conscious act of building a life aligned with biological truth. The brain is not an isolated organ. It is an outcome of lifestyle. And lifestyle, when shaped deliberately, becomes the most powerful antidote to cognitive decline. Mastering lifestyle for brain longevity means designing your life so that every system, physical, emotional, cognitive, and environmental, supports neuroprotection and neurogrowth. It is the art of integrating multiple small habits into a seamless daily rhythm that strengthens the brain without overwhelming the individual. Start with the morning. Mornings set the biochemical tone for the entire day. Exposure to natural sunlight regulates cortisol and circadian rhythm. A whole food breakfast rich in protein, healthy fats, and antioxidants stabilizes blood sugar and reduces inflammatory cascades. A short walk or stretching session increases blood flow to the brain and activates cognitive alertness. The goal is not efficiency, it is alignment with the body's natural rhythms. Throughout the day, movement must be constant, not necessarily strenuous, but consistent. Sitting is the new cognitive killer. Every 30-60 minutes, stand, stretch, breathe, and move. These micro-movements sustain oxygen supply and maintain insulin sensitivity. Incorporating short walks, stair climbing, gentle exercise, and occasional bursts of intensity protects metabolic and cognitive health simultaneously. Equally crucial is the mastery of attention. Modern brains are assaulted by distractions designed to fragment focus. Decluttering digital spaces, limiting notifications, practicing deep work, and creating device-free zones restore the brain's capacity for sustained concentration. Mental clarity is not rare, it is reclaimed when distractions are removed. Nutrition becomes a daily commitment. Whole foods, healthy fats, diverse plants, fermented foods, clean proteins, and consistent hydration. Avoiding sugar crashes, minimizing processed products, and prioritizing antioxidants transform the internal environment into one where neurons thrive instead of fight for survival. Emotional mastery is foundational. Stress must be managed through intentional practices, breathwork, mindfulness, nature exposure, journaling, social connection, and meaningful conversations. Emotional stability protects the hippocampus, strengthens prefrontal cortex function, and enhances decision-making. Evenings must prepare the brain for deep restorative sleep. This includes reducing screen exposure, dimming lights, avoiding late eating, practicing gentle relaxation, and maintaining a consistent sleep schedule. Nighttime is when the brain repairs itself, Protecting sleep protects the future. Finally, cognitive growth must never stop. Learning, reading, solving problems, acquiring new skills, playing instruments, engaging socially, and practicing curiosity stimulate neuroplasticity. A mind that continues to grow is a mind that resists decline. A brain health lifestyle does not require perfection. It requires rhythm. It requires consciousness. It requires showing up every day with the knowledge that every action either builds or erodes cognitive resilience. When lifestyle becomes aligned with biology, the brain does not simply preserve itself. It thrives. Dementia is widely believed to be an unavoidable consequence of aging, a tragic and irreversible decline baked into human biology. This belief is not only incorrect, it is dangerous. It shifts responsibility away from lifestyle and environment, placing it solely on fate and genetics. The truth emerging from modern neuroscience is remarkably more empowering. Dementia is largely the result of conditions we can influence, prevent, and often delay for decades. Cognitive decline does not begin with old age. It begins with years of small stressors, unnoticed habits, repeated inflammatory insults, persistent sleep deprivation, and gradual metabolic dysfunction. These processes begin early and accumulate quietly. By the time symptoms appear, the underlying mechanisms have been active for decades. But if decline can build slowly, then protection can also build slowly and far earlier. A dementia-proof life is not built on a single intervention, but a framework of interconnected habits that reinforce one another. It is built on the understanding that the brain is a living, adaptable system shaped by environment, behavior, and internal chemistry. When these conditions are aligned with biological needs, the brain becomes extraordinarily resilient, even into advanced age. Humans have longer lifespans than ever, but modern lifestyles have shortened our brain spans. A dementia-proof life is the antidote. It recognizes that cognitive longevity begins not with medicine, but with consistent intentional choices. The goal is not perfection, it is cumulative protection. Every improvement compounds, every positive habit is a deposit in the brain's longevity account. Your brain's future is not determined by your genes. Your genes may load the gun, but lifestyle pulls, or refuses to pull, the trigger. The power to influence your cognitive destiny is already in your hands. Creating a dementia-proof life means adopting a lifelong blueprint that integrates the core pillars of brain health into a sustainable, enjoyable, and deeply meaningful lifestyle. The goal is not rigidity, but long-term alignment with what the brain requires to stay sharp. 1. Protect the brain's biology. This includes managing inflammation, stabilizing blood sugar, supporting the gut microbiome, minimizing toxin exposure, and maintaining strong cardiovascular health. These are the biological foundations of cognitive preservation. 2. Master the mind's emotional landscape. Emotional resilience protects the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. Daily regulation of stress, nurturing supportive relationships, practicing gratitude, and cultivating emotional awareness form a stable psychological environment where cognition thrives. 3. Expand mental capacity throughout life. Never stop learning. Never stop challenging the brain. Engage in skills that force adaptation. Languages, music, complex hobbies, problem-solving, creative arts. The more diverse your learning, the more protected your cognition. 4. Build rhythms, not burdens. Create routines around sleep, nutrition, movement, and rest. The circadian rhythm must be honored. Recovery must be prioritized. The brain thrives on predictable biological timing. 5. Invest in social and environmental health. A dementia-proof life is not lived in isolation. It is built around community, meaningful conversations, shared experiences, supportive environments, and clean physical spaces that reduce toxin load. 6. Move like your life. Depends on it, because it does. Movement is medicine for the brain. Walking, strength training, balance work, coordination training, and cardiovascular activity ensure blood flow, neuroplasticity, and hormonal balance. 7. Live with purpose. Purpose is one of the strongest predictors of cognitive resilience. People with meaningful goals experience lower stress, stronger emotional regulation, and better long-term brain outcomes. Purposeful living anchors the mind. A dementia-proof life is not a single practice, but a constellation of habits, choices, relationships, and environments that interact to sustain cognitive vitality. When these elements align, aging becomes not a decline, but a continuation of growth. Dementia is not inevitable. Cognitive deterioration is not the natural end of life. A well-designed life, lived intentionally, nourished deeply, and aligned with the needs of the brain, becomes the strongest shield against decline. The blueprint is simple. The impact is profound. Your future memory, your future self, depends on the choices you make today.